This is the Smallrig SR-007 Pro shoulder rig kit, but I got it primarily for this quick release plate because it has some pretty cool features. I'm also going to use the shoulder rig and I'll talk a lot about the shoulder rig itself, but let's talk about the plate first. If you don't care about the plate for whatever reason, you can skip ahead to the actual shoulder rig part, but let's talk about this plate. Now, this quick release plate, as you can see, it has 3 rods attached to it. And the reason that I really wanted to get this plate, and I honestly looked to see if you could get the plate by itself, it seems like you can't. So I got the whole rig because honestly, I wanted a shoulder rig anyway. So this just sort of made sense. It is a standard Manfrotto quick release plate, just like any other tripod or shoulder rig plate that you'd have. The receiver on the shoulder rig itself is Manfrotto, so this will just slide straight in. Now it has obviously room for screws. It comes with multiple screws, so you can screw it straight into your camera cage. And then it also has this Arca Swiss receiver in there, so you can slide the cage of your camera straight into there, and that works great as well. That's all pretty good as it is, but as you can see, I've got rods in there too. Now these rods on the back just screw straight into this little receiver, which just screws onto the back of the plate. 2 screws go straight in the back. You can adjust it left or right if you need to. And then it comes with these 2 15mm rods that just screw straight into these little holes here. The reason you'd want to have 2 plates like this, there's probably 2 main reasons. One would be if you want to mount a V-mount battery plate on the back, something like this. This is from Catifo. They just sent it to me and I don't know, it's okay. My biggest gripe with it is it doesn't have a switch, so I still have to unplug stuff. So yes, it is better than using just the battery itself, but not by a whole lot. So also it only has 1 USB-C port and 1 USB-A port, so then I need a C to A cable if I want a second USB device. It does have 2 D-taps though, which is pretty good, and obviously it has DC as most would. Didn't come with a bracket though. This is from one of my Smallrig plates. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. If you wanted to put a V-mount battery plate on the back of here, then you do that, slide that right on there, tighten that down, and then you've got a V-mount plate directly attached to your quick release plate. But it goes further. As you can see, I've got a rod on the front here, and that attaches to one of these holes here. There's a little bracket that just holds 1 rod, and then this is the rod from my Tilta Nucleus Nano 2 that I've got here. Right now I've got it on this lens because I'm shooting on an anamorphic manual focus lens, so I kind of need it. But I can just attach that rod straight there. I can put it through, so if I have a really long lens and the focus ring's like way out here, I can have it sticking out this way. But the benefit of it going all the way through is that I can actually put it back if I need to put the motor back here further, which I have found I need because if I am attaching the camera here at the back, then you know, most of the lenses that I have at least, their focus ring's like here. So there's no reason for it to be way further out here. But it would depend on the lens and depends on your rig in general. But if you are putting the KG mirrorless camera in the Arca Swiss slot there, you'd probably want to have the rod going back. Now, this was the reason that I got this particular shoulder rig. Also, I bought this. Now, there is an affiliate link in the description if you would like. I did not get sent this by Smallrig. I just bought it myself. So if you want to get one and you want to use my affiliate link in the description, it'll help pay for this. So there's that. But the reason that this is so exciting, obviously you can put the rods on, right? But that means that I don't even need an entire base plate. My base plate on this camera right now, and if you go watch my last video, I used my Tilta dual base plate, and it is quite tall. It's got 2 slots for the rods, and then there's just like another bit, and then you put your release plate in the top, and then your quick release plate in the bottom, and it's just very tall. This means that the camera can go here, the camera just slides in here, and then that's the whole thing. It's only, you know, the thickness of the plate tall, which I thought was just gonna be an outright amazing thing, the best thing ever, right? It's pretty good, but it causes its own issues. So one of the issues that I've found is that if you do have just this, if you have anything that goes lower than the rods, they're gonna hit the floor or your tripod or the table, whatever you're putting this on. That's not great. Also, this holder, the rod holder at the front, it also bumps into some lenses because it's so close, which is not ideal. So like my 24-70 is actually touching right there, and it's as far out as it can go. Now I could put it on the left because it's As you can see, it's sort of up here, whereas if I put it in there, it'd go down. But the problem with that is then it's going to be lower than the bottom, so then I can't just put it flat on a table without that resting on the table. So it's not just an outright amazing thing that I thought it was going to be. However, it's still very handy. My plan for this was for it to replace my whole base plate system that I've got on this camera, and you'll see that later in the video when I use that rig on the shoulder rig itself. But I kind of decided against that. This is going to be more for my smaller B cam rig, which this is pretty similar. If I just put the V-mount plate on there, and then if I chucked a battery on here, then that would be sort of my whole kit, which would be this. I do have the monitor on this way because I was using it to shoot video of myself. But this, as a pretty small but very functional rig, is still very good. And the quick release plate built into it means that I can just chuck it on a shoulder rig or chuck it on a tripod or just put it flat on a table, and I don't need to worry about it being unstable or anything like that. My previous setup for like my B cam rig, my second camera rig, would be this little contraption here. Now this is two things. A very similar actually quick release plate with an Arca receiver on the top. So very similar sort of principle. It's just, this is just a quick release plate and that's it. And honestly, that's fine. This is great. I've been using this for ages. I can just chuck it straight on a camera cage or straight on the bottom of this, because this has an Arca plate on the bottom as well. And this is one of those folding V-mount plates. So it just sort of folds down like that, folds up like that. It's easy to just sort of attach because there's just an Arca receiver in here. So this will slide straight onto a cage, and then I can just put my quick release plate straight on the bottom of this. This has been sort of my main B-cam rig, I guess. This attached to the camera. I obviously put handle, a monitor, and a battery, of course, on here. But the biggest issue that I had with this is that this is not a powered plate. Now I know, the only one that I know of that is the same sort of design but powered is ZG Cine. They have one that is basically the same as this, but with a powered plate with a switch on it and multiple ports and everything like that. That would be a pretty good system to replace sort of this. But the other issue with a system like this is if I'm running manual focus lenses, I then need to add a rod to put a follow focus on. Whereas with this system, I can just put a rod straight on to the base plate. I can leave this rod holder attached, or I can quickly attach it, and it's no slower than attaching a rod itself, but then it's attached to the base plate. So then it's not attached to the cage, which I do like the idea, especially with mirrorless cameras like this, of attaching things to the base plate rather than the cage. So I can basically just take the camera out, and that's sort of a benefit that this whole system can be. It means I only have to take two things off. I take the camera out of the base plate, and then I take the handle off the top of the cage, obviously unplug the cables, and then I've just got a camera by itself ready to go if I wanted to go shoot photos. Not that I shoot photos basically ever, but I could. Or if I wanted to put this in another rig or put this up on a stand out of the way where I can't fit a whole rig. One of the big benefits of using mirrorless cameras, small mirrorless cameras like this, is that adaptability. But if it's like stuck in a cage and rigged up and everything, just like it takes a while to de-rig or rig up, then it kind of defeats the purpose. And while yes, I would like a full cinema camera, I want to get the Pixus 12K. So hopefully by the time it comes out, I can afford to, unless Blackmagic wants to send me one or something like that. But yeah, while this plate itself isn't all that I hoped it would be, it is still really good. And yeah, it's just a little bit too short. And honestly, what I could do is just add another Arca Swiss plate on like the bottom of one of my cameras, or even put this folding V-mount plate on there, which would then make it higher, but then that kind of defeats the purpose of having the rods at the back. So not really much point in that. So yeah, not going to use it as I thought, but I will definitely be using it in a very similar way. But yeah, that's the whole base plate situation. Let's talk about the shoulder rig itself. Okay, so this is my normal like handheld general rig for pretty much everything. I don't really change this a whole lot, and I've talked about pretty much this exact same rig before, but what I've sort of figured out with how to use the shoulder rig is that I can just take this as is, slide it straight onto the rig, and then I can use this on my shoulder and then if I need to switch to handheld, I can take it off. So what I did to make that happen was to get these 1 meter long cables. I got a D-tap to DC, and I got an HDMI cable. The HDMI cable is from Smallrig. I'll leave a link in the description. The DC one is from Alvin's cables. I just got it on Amazon. Honestly, I probably could have got away with like a 60-ish centimeter cable for both, but I just didn't want it to be too short because the cables that I currently have are too short. So I wanted to be able to make sure that it would work, and if I have to wrap cables around something, that's fine. And what I've also got on here is this is the Fieldworld LUT7, so I just have a 7-inch monitor here, so I don't have to take it off my other rig. I can just leave it on there, and this, because I wanted this to be sort of a, if we need a shoulder rig shot, I can build this in a minute, and then I'm ready to go. And then if we need to go back to handheld, I can do that again in a minute. I don't need to spend 5-10 minutes rigging up a camera. I don't have to unplug any cables. I don't have to move any monitors, take anything off. I can just put the entire rig on here. All I have to do is plug in 2 cables. I'm thinking I might put a cable tie around them to connect them together up until like they get to the camera, like here. First of all, with the shoulder rig itself, this is a Manfrotto style receiver. Now it is a slide-in one. It's not drop-in, which it would be nice if it was drop-in, but you know, I kind of get why they don't do drop-in. But the annoying part about it being a slide is that this little like safety latch thing, it's not the same as all other things, even other Smallrig things. So not all plates will be able to slide past it. But I'll just take the Manfrotto plate that's on the bottom of here, slide it straight into there. It'll go as far as it'll go, and then it gets stopped by that safety pin. And then we just have the little lock right here with my thumb there, and then all I have to do is plug in these 2 cables. So I haven't quite figured out how I'm actually going to do it quite yet, but I'll probably, like I said, have them cable tied together, wrap them up, probably, well, maybe we'll go under here, and then what I'll do is I'll take the HDMI cable and I'll plug that into the HDMI out on my monitor here, so I don't have to worry about unplugging this monitor. I'm just taking the feed straight from the monitor, so this monitor will still be on. So if anyone wanted to like look over my shoulder or like above my head to see the monitor, they can. And then I'll take the D-tap end of the power cable. And now this is the issue with it being probably a little bit too long, is that it sort of hangs around a little bit. So I will just sort of wrap it around things a little bit, and then I'll plug it in here to the side of the Condor Blue V-mount Pro. I've talked about this before, how it has the double-sided D-tap, so there's 3 pins, so you can put it on either way. And then now, let's switch everything on. Now, the annoying thing is with the Fieldworld LUT7 is you can't leave it switched on, so I have to manually turn it on every time. But now I've got everything on. As you can see, there is feed on the monitor there, on both monitors actually. So this would have come in handy a lot on the last short film that I shot, where we did a lot of sort of shoulder height stuff where we were shooting people's faces, obviously, but not from down low. We wanted to be sort of the same height as everybody else. That meant that I just had to hold my normal handheld rig up on my shoulder sort of thing, and I've done that before as well. And it's fine, it works okay. It's honestly, it's a little bit more nimble than something like this, but it is a bit less stable and it's a bit more tiring because I have to like hold it up there. Whereas on this next film that I'm shooting next weekend, actually, will probably be split fairly evenly from tripod, handheld, and shoulder rig. So it's nice that I'll be able to just switch between all 3 of those really easily. Now, how I've got the monitor here mounted is I've got the Fullcam F22 monitor mount. So it's just, I've got an F22 plate on the bottom of the monitor and an F22 plate right here. So I can just slide that on. So if I do want to take the monitor off, I can. And all that's left there is a little plate. Now, maybe it'd be better to have like the whole Hawk lock system because they've got a Hawk lock cage. This is technically a Hawk lock shoulder rig. However, I don't really know what makes this particular rig Hawk lock. There's not really anything Hawk lock except for the sliding arms, which in and of themselves, it doesn't really matter what the system and how they do that is. So yeah, the location of this monitor is really good. I tried figuring out a way where I can get this monitor without moving it too much, maybe just like moving it or adjusting where it's mounted and putting it like up here, but then it's just that little bit too close where I have to like lean back so my eyes can focus. Like I just can't focus quite that close. Maybe it would be easier with a smaller monitor. I doubt it, but it's easy enough to have a second monitor down here. I have a 7-inch monitor here. Could go with a 5, but honestly, the main reason that I chose this one is because it has its ports on the bottom, whereas the Atomos Ninja 5 and the Fieldworld F5 Pro X, which I also have, they both have the HDMI ports on the left side, so then I'd have cables sticking out here and then have to wrap around. So I thought it'd be better if it just comes out the bottom here and then go around. So yeah, this is the rig as a rig. I'll even record a little bit so you can see. This is actually what I'm looking at right now. This lighting setup took forever. There's 2 lights out there. There's another light out there. That's just for fill, but it's not really doing much. And then I've got a hair light up there. And one of the things with, especially this upcoming short film, is that we'll probably be shooting on zoom lenses. So this Sigma 24-70 and my Sony 7200, I can still access the zoom ring here while still having pretty good control. I think the main issue with this system, especially while shooting autofocus, is I can't really do anything with the autofocus. I can't see the screen on the camera. I can't really press the focus standard button. So I have the little like joystick as focus standard. So it'll just like quickly just focus on the middle of the screen. So I would have to have my hand up like this to do that. I don't really think that's really the play. So I'm just gonna sort of hope for the most part that if we're using autofocus that it just sort of does what it needs to. And if it doesn't, then maybe I need to adjust my settings or maybe we just go again. But yeah, that's the rig. I'm gonna take this back off. And honestly, I could even just take this off and use it handheld as is. But let's take it out of the shoulder rig here. I'm gonna unplug that and that. And now one thing I have noticed with this quick release system is that it does seem to get stuck a little bit at this front end. Not quite sure what that's about, but maybe it'll just get a little bit easier over time. Sometimes it's super easy, so I think it must just be an angle thing, like the angle that it's going in. Now it does all come in a carrying case, which when broken apart, this all just sort of fits in its pieces. Honestly, I don't know if I'm gonna do that because it's easy enough to just fold up and I can just leave it. I don't need to then build it when I get to set or anything like that. So what I'm thinking is I'll just sort of leave it either like this or I'll just sort of fold it up. Now these arms are like, they're just rosettes and they've got like sort of quick release knobs on there, like little levers. And then both of the arms sort of slide with, I guess this is technically Hawk Lock. It's like a NATO rail type thing. What you can do is actually, I'll get this out of the way. There's a button on the side here where if you press that, you can extend or shorten the arms. You basically like move the arms forward and backwards. So it literally says on here for balance. So, I guess that's why you do that. But you can even, if you had a camera on here, you could even just use this as a rig like this. Maybe you go and hand on the lens or hand underneath, and then you can just use this as a side handle. Now, what I was hoping that I could do, and honestly there probably is a way to do it, I just haven't figured it out yet, is take off this arm and put the handle straight onto the rosette at the front here. So then I can have this as a back handle and then I have a front handle here. That's sort of how I want to be operating handheld, at least like this. So if there's a way to do that, if you know, first of all, let me know. But if I figure it out, I'll probably give that a try. You can also loosen this knob on the front here and slide the whole handle unit back or side to side, I guess. So I currently have it set as far to the handles move to the left as possible, so I don't have to reach across with my arms to sort of be in line with the rig. I'll just sort of put my hands where they want to sit naturally, and then I can adjust basically the position of the rig. But yeah, if I want to pack it up for storage, I can just sort of fold things up like this. We'll go one more there. And then with the back pad here, which to be fair, it does have springs on it, so it can sort of tip that way. And there's a little button here that if you press that, this will rotate 90 degrees. And then now it's up and down. So then now it'll flex up and down depending on what you prefer. If you're doing a lot of ups and downs or left and rights, and just maybe the shape of your back and how it fits over your shoulder, you can adjust that. You can slide it slightly forward or back depending on where you want it. And then of course, if you just press in this little button, you can take this whole thing off. If for some reason you don't want the back pad, if maybe you want it to be easier to just throw on your shoulder to take off, or you don't need that support, or you don't like that support. And then on the back here, you've got that folds down to sort of pack away or just be out of the way so it doesn't stick out. This is a NATO rail on both sides. So this is just a NATO rail attachment that'll slide straight on there. And then you've got a NATO rail on the top along with 4 1/4-20 screw threads all the way through. So you can mount stuff to the back of that if you need to. The actual shoulder pad itself is removable. It's just on there with Velcro basically, and it is asymmetrical. So I don't know if you can really see that. This side with the 2 little indent, or with the 2 little bits there, that is actually lower than, let's see if can you see that? That's actually lower than the other side. So if you have it on your left side or your right side, you can turn that around depending on the shape of your shoulder and where you like to have it sitting, and also, yeah, which shoulder you have it on. Now, as I mentioned, I have a monitor attached here. So there is a 1/4-20 thread with locating pins on either arm. So you can mount a monitor, mainly like what else would you mount there? Maybe you could put like a little follow focus, you put like a NATO rail on there, and then you can have your Tilta Nucleus Nano 2. Like I've got here, I could maybe attach that there if I wanted, or I know a lot of people would, if you take the handle off, you can put a rosette on there and then you can attach your follow focus with a rosette, and then you can just follow focus that, but then you can't really put much weight on that hand. So I don't really like the idea of that. It would be nice if shoulder rigs like this could maybe attach something on the top of this handle so I could still hold the handle, but then with my fingers here, I could just, pull focus like that. Ideally, in cases where you are using manual focus, you have an AC, so then someone else can be doing it. Now, those threads are not on the part that moves. So when you extend the arm there, the monitor or whatever you have mounted there stays where it is, which I feel like is good for the most part. There might be cases where you would want that to move further, which you can't really do, but you can obviously just adjust the angle of the arm if you want it further forward or further down. But I think that's fine. The main issue that I sort of noticed with having one here, especially a 7-inch one, is if the camera is far enough back that it can see the top of the monitor, that's not ideal, obviously, if you're shooting on a pretty wide lens. Now, I was seeing it on my A7 IV that I'm shooting on now because it's full frame, so it's going to be a bit wider than the APS-C sensor of the FX30. With the FX30 at 24mm, it's fine. If I maybe angled the arm up a little bit, I definitely would see it in the bottom left corner of the frame. Or if I was shooting on a particularly wide lens, like a 16 or a 14 or a 10mm lens, you'd probably see it. So you probably wouldn't be able to have a monitor there, or you'd have to mount it as far forward as you can so the lens is really far forward. Now, on the inside of the arms here, there is a little like cable holder. So when you've got your monitor on here, you can take the cables from it. Let's go around that way. I've got an HDMI cable, as I said, and a power cable. So I'm going to put the HDMI cable in one. There's sort of a double like holder, so I can hold both those cables in separate little loops, which is nice. And I literally just noticed that now. I tried to do it before, didn't work. Now, the problem with this big one is it's actually a bit too big. It's a bit loose for this power cable, so this power cable is just not quite thick enough to hold it. So I may have to do something about that, but for the most part, that's a pretty good feature. And then obviously I'll just run those cables around and plug them in to the rig. Now, as much as I'm excited to use this very soon for, these short films and stuff, one of the biggest issues that I've found with a shoulder rig in general with mirrorless cameras is mirrorless cameras aren't really designed to be used like this. So I'll show you what I mean. And this is a gripe that I've talked about before with just mirrorless cameras in general. Because all the I/O is on the left side, all the cables stick out to the left, which is where my head is. So these cables are just sticking right into my ear here, which is not ideal. Now, this is as far back as this camera can go with this plate. So I can't really just push it back behind my head so that the lens is next to my head. That is what I did with this camera when I tried it. I had it on there. I just put it back further because that plate will allow it to go back further. I can go further forward, but then the cables are like in front of my face, like this, and that's not really what we want either. So what I've sort of found is it's just like, make sure the cables are going like up as much as possible. Right angle cables could be helpful if they work with your rig. Now they're not going to work with this particular HDMI clamp because it's just, that's not how right angle cables work. But both these cables are reasonably easy to just make go up. So that's mostly fine. And then I can actually rest, it's kind of the cable, honestly, that's resting against my head, but even the handle here, I can sort of rest against my head to sort of increase stability by adding another point of contact. Now this would be a lot better with a cinema camera, like a box, like an FX6 or a Pixis or something like that, Red Komodo. Those sort of cameras are designed more for uses like this. And one of the issues that I've always found with the marketing for shoulder rigs like this is they always show really basic mirrorless rigs. Like it'll just be a camera, maybe a top handle, maybe a monitor. Half the time there's not even a monitor on there. So they just don't have like realistic rigs. Also, if you were gonna have such a simple rig like that, how are you gonna monitor it? Like you can't see the screen if it's behind your head or even like right in front of your face because your eyes can't focus that close. So some of the marketing behind a lot of rigs like this, and this isn't just Smallrig, this is, you know, anyone that makes sort of non-high tier professional stuff, like not like Bright Tangerine or Wooden Camera, you know, like the Smallrigs and the Tiltas and stuff like that. And a lot of, you know, other people that I've seen that have made videos about shoulder rigs, they'll use a very basic rig a lot of the time. And I just don't think that's realistic, because why would you use a rig like that with, you know, a shoulder rig? It just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But otherwise, I'm pretty happy with how this rig has turned out for the most part. One of the other issues that I haven't really figured out is the balance, like having it to not fall forward like that. Ideally, you would want it to sort of just sit and you could actually let go. Now I can sort of put it on my shoulder so it does that in a way where I can let go and it just sort of sits there. Another thing that I've also seen people talking about shoulder rigs before, making videos about shoulder rigs, is they have so much weight on their arms, and it's like, that's kind of not the point of a shoulder rig. It's to take all the weight off your arms and put it on your shoulder. Your arms are there for control, not to hold the camera. Anyway, I'm gonna call this video there. I will probably make a video about comparing this to handheld and maybe to other things like a SAC or maybe a gimbal. I don't know if I'm gonna use a gimbal. I don't use gimbals. So let me know if you want to see that video, and I'll have more thoughts after I've used this more, especially to using it on a project where I know I'll be using this and handheld and just switching back and forth between, and I'll let you know how that process goes. Anyway, that'll be all for this one. Go watch my last video if you missed it, about making a really compact rig for my FX30, much smaller than this rig. Let me know what you think. Do the other things while you're around, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.